Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I generally just read a lot, but I also work at a theatre and get to see a lot of shows. When you work at a theatre, you're either inside the auditorium or you're outside, and so far for this production I've been on the inside every single time, so I've seen it 3 times and I thought I'd discuss it. The show is Of Mice and Men. This is a Leeds Playhouse production done with Birmingham Rep and Fiery Angel Productions, presented in arrangement with Joseph Weinberger Limited. The run for this was the 11th to the 27th of May, and the 27th of May is the day that I am filming this, and I am working the production tonight, so let's find out if I do get to see it again or not. The running time is 2 hours and 45 minutes with a 20-minute interval. At a 7:30 start, we usually finish around 10:15. Though I must admit, the production I last saw it, there was a delay because the actor who played Lenny became ill, and so we had to get the emergency understudy in, so the second half went up slightly later. I think there was about a 20-minute delay on the interval, so it was already 20 minutes and there was another 20 minutes as they got the understudy ready. Ticket prices average from £14 to £32 in the Playhouse. I've seen people who have come to see shows who aren't from Leeds compare Leeds to the other palace in London with the way that the stairs are designed. So I'm just going to read you the blurb that we have from the Playhouse production. George and Lenny are migrants with a dream of a better life, a place where they can belong, where Lenny feels safe and George can be somebody. But this is the Great Depression. Not many dreams come true in a time where a few have plenty but most have nothing. When the friends take a job on Curly's farm, tragedy unfolds, leading to a heartbreaking decision. John Steinbeck's classic novel is more than 80 years old, but with themes of economic migration, racism, prejudice and exclusion, it remains a parable for our times. A story of enduring friendship and hope, this new production from Birmingham Rep Associate Director and Commonwealth Games Opening Ceremony Director Iqbal Khan puts a 2023 lens on Steinbeck's affecting tale of the crumbling American dream. I think it's just generally a bit of a Marmite story. You either love it or you hate it. I've come across a lot of audience members who studied it at school. I was one of those people that studied at school for my GCSE, but it does mean that I have not read it for a very, very long time. So I read it when I was 14, 15, and now I'm 34. So there was another gentleman that I met who was watching it who said, oh, well, I'm in my 40s and I studied it for my school. And I had a really nice conversation with him, and I was talking to him in the interval. I had a little chat with him at the end of the show as well, and I was just like, oh, what did you think? And he was just like, it's just sad. The story is just sad. So it starts on stage with George and Lenny and the full ensemble in what I'd say is a moment of symbolism at the beginning of the show, which I didn't quite catch on to the first time I saw it. I understood that bit more the second time I saw it, when I realised what they were doing. So you've got Lenny and George at the beginning, and then there are ensemble members carrying a piece of red cloth. There is only one female member of the ensemble who plays Curly's wife. At the beginning of the show, this piece of red material wraps around her, and Lenny goes to touch the material. The music changes and then everybody leaves, leaving George and Lenny on stage, where they are on stage uninterrupted for about 20 minutes for a dialogue where you basically establish the relationship that they have, where you find out that Lenny has some learning disabilities. He's not quite all there. He's very childlike, not childish, childlike, because he's described as being, in the book, a very tall man with incredible strength, but is not aware of that strength. And that is a very, very big part of the story. And there is another character in the show that refers to Lenny as being just a kid. And yeah, it's a very, very powerful story. I think when I studied it, it wasn't one of my favourites, but I think I can appreciate it more as an adult. When I talk about the trigger warnings in this show, this was another one, because if you saw my video about Lord of the Flies, that had a lot of trigger warnings. This isn't quite as long as the trigger warnings for Lord of the Flies, but there is a lot. It says, Of Mice and Men stays true to the original script, exposing the depths of the characters and inviting conversations around difficult topics set against the brutality of the time. It will contain sensitive content, including topics that cover racism, ableism, sexism, violence, assault, murder, death, plus some strong and offensive language. I'm surprised that that trigger and advisory doesn't mention the animal abuse. Basically, there is an actor involved who mainly controls the puppet. There is a dog in the first half, which I'll admit, on subsequent viewings of it, I've spent so much time looking at the puppeteer and the puppet because the detail on it is so incredible. I'd say for me, the really, really big standout of the show were the actor who plays Lenny, because I think that must be an incredibly difficult role to portray and get that fine line right between how gentle he is but also the darkness underneath that, and also the fact that he's just incredibly childlike. The puppetry and the puppeteer are just absolutely stunning, and then the set design is just stunning. I'll put some pictures up on the screen. None of these pictures belong to me. All pictures of the set are taken from the Playhouse website. I'm not sure who the photographer is, but if anybody does know who took the photographs for this production, please let me know. I'll go through that cast list for you. Tom McCall playing George, William Young playing Lenny, James Clyde playing the boss, Simon Darwin as Slim, Maddie Hill as Curly's wife, Edward Judge as Carlson, Reese Pantry as Crooks, Stuart Quigley as Wit, Lee Rabbit as Candy, Riyad Ritchie as Curly, and then Jake Benson as the puppeteer. I do not have the name of the emergency understudy that I saw on my last shift. Admittedly, this is the first time I've ever seen Of Mice and Men on stage, so I have nothing to compare it to other than the book, and I just found it quite a faithful production. There were some parts that felt a bit long-winded. I do wonder if maybe it could have been shortened, because some bits you just felt like it was a bit too much at times. But I think that comes from trying to stay as faithful to the book as possible. It ultimately comes down to Lenny's inability to know his own strength. There's a pattern through there, and if you pay attention to that pattern, you can tell what's coming even if you don't know the story. You can tell that something's going to happen in regards to Lenny's unknown strength. There's so many points throughout the story that just lead up to what happens in the end. It is ultimately a story of friendship between George and Lenny. There are many comments throughout the story on how unlikely their friendship is and how you don't often see two men go around together. There are references throughout the text to how long George and Lenny have known each other for. There are references to Lenny's Aunt Clara, who has passed away, and Lenny's love for anything soft and different materials and the way he strokes things. It is just a very, very powerful story. As I said, there's the symbolism at the beginning, which when I saw it again on my second viewing, it was just like, oh, how did I miss that the first time I saw it? And so I feel like it is a show that you can watch a few times and find something new to concentrate on. That's what I love about theatre, is that if you do see something again, it's never going to be exactly the same, because even though the dialogue doesn't change and the blocking doesn't change, you might say a line just slightly different, which affects the way that people react to it. But third time I saw it, when the understudy came on in the second half, and seeing how the actors reacted to having a new Lenny on stage, it was just so lovely to watch. I found that, especially because it was my third time watching it, seeing the emergency understudy go on and seeing how the actors made sure that the new Lenny knew what he was doing, because he came on with a script in his hand. It was obvious that he had never gone on for this role before. He didn't completely know the role 100%, though he didn't rely on the script. He wasn't like this the whole time. There were certain parts he knew, some points when he just needed to just like check where he was. He got a standing ovation at the end, I'll just tell you that. He was brilliant. And there was a certain point of choreography in the second half that I was just thinking, I'm not sure how they're going to do this if he had a script in his hand, but it was obvious that they had definitely rehearsed him through this, and he was able to put the script down for this important piece of choreography that happens in the second half with Curly's wife. And so, yeah, seeing it through the eyes of somebody who didn't really appreciate the story much when I was at school, but I always, whenever I see anything, I suppose, I don't think there's anything I've ever hated when I saw it. There might have been shows out there that I maybe thought was a little bit boring, but there's always something I can find to appreciate in a show. And I will say, as a cast, this group of people looked like they were, I was going to say like having fun with it, but that just seems like the wrong words to use in regards to the context of the play. But you can tell that these group of people are genuine friends, and the way they helped the understudy was absolutely amazing. Yeah, I just thought this was a very powerful production. The actor who played Candy, Lee Ravitt, I loved that there was just the way that he spoke was just, there was kind of a comfort to it. I will say it did feel like some of the racism in the show had been toned down slightly, because I remember it being quite a big part of the story, but I feel like it had been toned down slightly. Not being eliminated altogether, but it did feel like it was toned down slightly. For me, the part of the story that felt like it went on a bit too long was when Carlson is saying that Candy's dog needs to be put down. That is a really, really hard part of the story to watch, and it does feel like it goes on for quite a long time. And also it's in the first half of the show, which I think adds to the length of the first act. There is a lot of talk about the dog and how old it is and how it's got no teeth and how it can't feed itself, and Carlson goes on a very, very long rant about how he's going to take this dog out. Sorry if this is a trigger for anybody, but yeah, it is quite a long moment in the show of Carlson telling Candy and anybody who will listen that this dog needs to be put down. The design of the puppet, when you look at it, and the detail on it in regards to you being able to see some of its skeleton and the way that Jake Benson, the puppeteer, moves it. And I'll admit, I think it was my second show where I spent so much time watching the puppet and seeing the detail that goes into that, because the puppet, just the detail in the choreography of the puppet, from the breathing to the turning around in a circle before getting down, the very laboured breathing coming from the dog, the little details of it like cleaning itself and stuff. It's so interesting to watch stuff like that. And this is while all the dialogue is going on, that the puppet is moving constantly. It's so realistic. Curly's wife is just Curly's wife. That character does not have a name in the text or in the production at all. And I'll admit, I can't remember how I felt about the character when I read it, but in the show, it's a bit of a mixed bag in regards to how I feel about that character. Because you feel sorry for her, but at the same time, you see the position the men are put in by Curly's wife, and you kind of want her to grow up a little bit. Because she's very naive, she's very lonely, which is why she turns up to the boys so much. And then you've also got the extreme jealousy on Curly's side, because Curly, throughout pretty much the whole show, is running around trying to find his wife. There's only one scene that we actually see them together, and that's in the second half, and it's not how you expect to see them in the same room. I just say that. Yeah, so throughout the whole production you see Curly running around asking where his wife is and shouting at anybody who might have had interaction with his wife. I just found that in regards to Curly's wife, there were some points where it's just like, I just found her to be incredibly naive and felt like she needs to grow up a little bit. And because she does get everybody in trouble. And it's the perfume that she wears that lingers. And that's how everybody figures out where she's been. Like when she lingers at the back when George and Lenny and Candy are talking about like what they want to do, the little farmhouse they're saving up for, and she's at the back lingering, and then suddenly George goes, I can smell her perfume, like what are you doing back there? And she admits that she's lonely, she doesn't have any friends, Curly's constantly working so she never sees him either, and so she wanders about just trying to find somebody to talk to. But at the same time, anybody who has a conversation with Curly's wife is going to be shouted at by Curly. You don't want to accuse Curly's wife of doing anything when she's lonely and she just wants someone to talk to. But at the same time, I'm just there thinking, girl, just take the perfume off. Stop spraying that perfume, because you're just telling everybody where you've been whenever you wear that perfume. So it's a bit of an awkward thing, because it's just like, I don't want to blame Curly's wife for what Curly's doing. But at the same time, it does feel like she knows what she is doing when she does it, because it's just like there's a point in the first half where Slim goes off to help one of his horses. I think one of the horseshoes comes off, and so he goes off to fix it. And so he's the only one not there. And then Curly comes in looking for his wife, realises that Slim isn't there, and goes, oh, I bet they're together, and he runs off, and everybody's going, fight, 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 essentially. And you're just like, at that point, Curly's wife isn't even there. You know, it's like she's just in the house by herself at that point, because Slim is very definitely trying to look after his horse. So that just shows you the jealousy on Curly's part. It's also the fact that I think in the text there's references to Curly having a bit of a Napoleon complex, with the fact that he generally picks fights with anybody who is taller and bigger than him. I just find it a very powerful production. It's a very sad production when you look at the heart of it, which basically feels like George and Lenny's story. You're looking at that friendship, how long they've spent time together, why George puts up with Lenny and why Lenny puts up with George, and how George looked out for Lenny, and how what happened back in Weed, how George supports Lenny and helps him to escape what happened. It's just the fact that obviously with Lenny being so childlike, I mean, at the beginning of the show, in that first 20 minutes between Lenny and George, Lenny has a dead mouse, which Lenny throws away, and then Lenny goes and gets it back because he just wants something soft to play with and touch. When George throws the mouse away the second time, he says, at some point, I'll get you something bigger. I'll get you like a pup or something. When they get to the farm where they're working, there's a dog there that's just had pups. And so Slim says that he can have one of the pups. And so Lenny has a very big attachment to the pup that he is given, to the point where he tries to take the pup into the sleeping quarters, and George is there going, no, you can't bring it in here, like the pups have only just been born, take the pup back. And Lenny ends up sleeping overnight where the pups are. I feel like I've just said so much without actually telling you what happens. That's what happens in a production like this, where a lot of it is just about, like, you really don't want to spoil it, but it does very much feed into Lenny's unknown strengths and how strong he is, but how childlike he is. And then also about Curly's wife and how naive she is. I mean, when she has her scene with Lenny in the second half, and they're both just completely not listening to each other. Like, Lenny's scared he's going to be in trouble with George because of something that's happened, and he was just like, am I going to get another pup? Am I allowed to play with the rabbits when we have our own place? And Curly's wife is going on about how she wanted to be in movies and talk about her parents and the relationship she had with her father and her father's alcoholism, and they're just on completely two different conversations, to the point where Lenny is still going on about the rabbits, and then Curly's wife is there going, did you listen to a word I just said? And repeatedly tells Lenny that he's nuts, but nice. There's a couple of moments where the set slightly changes, and I was just completely obsessed with the set changes. See this big set piece in the middle here? It's hung there with wires. The first scene change, when there's a big lighting cue, everything comes on to transform the outside where Lenny and George have been into the farm where they're going to be working. This middle set piece moves. It was kind of like when I saw Macbeth at the Playhouse for the first time, and because it starts off with like this bridge thing that's facing down, and then it comes up, and it was just like, oh my goodness, that looks amazing. I had a similar moment when this top set piece moved in the first scene change. This moves, all the beds for the farmhouse go in, and yeah, it was just, I was just completely obsessed with the set design for this show. It was just absolutely stunning. So it's Of Mice and Men, Playhouse production, done with Birmingham Rep and Fiery Angel Productions. That was the page on the Leeds Playhouse website. It might still be available to see on archive. It's very much an ensemble piece, and there's also music in there. I didn't mention the music. It's very much a play with music rather than being considered a musical. It just, the music was, and the songs were mainly to aid transitions, scene changes, and stuff like that. I thought it was a beautiful production, very faithful to the book, which did make some pieces seem a little bit long-winded. That was some of my thoughts on the production that we've had up there. I'm not paid to say any of this, paid as an employee of the Playhouse, but they have never asked me to make any reviews. I do this because I just wanted to talk about it. I was wondering if I did want to do this, but after seeing it 3 times, it was just like, I feel like I need to talk about this, and also give a shout out to the emergency understudy, whose name I can't see here, so it was very much the emergency understudy for Lenny that went on. The fact that, you know, I think there was an announcement during the interval which I managed to miss when I was selling ice creams. And I remember looking down and going, what's going on? And they were just like, what have you heard? Absolutely nothing. They're just like, oh, actively pain Lenny has fallen ill. So they get me understudy in. It was like, oh, okay. I think it might be the stage manager that went out on the stage just before it started, just to announce what was going on. Again, for anybody who missed it, and said, got an emergency understudy going on, please be gentle with him. And yeah, he just he knocked it out of the park. He was brilliant, and as I said, at the end he got a standing ovation, and he got another bow at the end as well. So that's my thoughts on Of Mice and Men at Leeds Playhouse. Don't forget to talk to me in the comments if there's anything in particular you want me to see me talk about. Obviously, whenever I go to see the theatre, I love talking about the shows that I see, and to be honest, if I didn't work at the Playhouse, I probably wouldn't have chosen to go see this show. But that's what I love about the Playhouse, the fact that I do get to see the shows that there's a good chance I probably wouldn't have given a chance. I just feel like this year has been kind of syllabus heavy, but I don't mind that. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time with another video. Mwah. Stay safe, my lovelies.